You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 569, our breakdown of the new Skeleton Crew trailer, which I guess is the only official one. It's really a D23 trailer, so I don't know if it's an official trailer. So we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about all the stuff that we saw. A lot of new footage here compared to what we saw last year at Celebration, and a lot of great feels for me personally as a result of this trailer. So more on that here in a second. But joining with me tonight, as always, is Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. Welcome back after like a 2-week break that we've had. So well-deserved, I think. But
yeah, it's been a while. It's funny, for as much time as we have off, I think we crammed about 3 months worth of content within about 6 weeks, something like that.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to have a little bit of a break, but ready to get back to it. And it's nice to have some fresh content and really D23 delivering a lot, way more than what I expected. And I think in general, more than what we usually get for Star Wars. So a pretty good showing. They actually made this feel like a true kind of convention, if you will, which was really, I know it's an expo and it's usually kind of a celebration of all things Disney, but this one was like hitting it all over the place. And some of the things we've talked about with like Uncle Bob's discussion in the quarterly earnings calls and stuff were front and center about doubling down on franchises that do well and that families love. And you're seeing that in full force with what we got at D23.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And, you know, we talked about it and we said the only reason we might get more than we typically do at D23 was because we're going to be going through a long period of here with not really much to talk about. I mean, we're going to be going until Celebration. There's not really a big avenue or anything, at least scheduled now, to talk about it. So, but yeah, it was pretty surprised that we got what we did. I think the Mandu Grogu one was probably the most surprised, even though that wasn't technically a trailer. It was more a lot of footage from like one particular scene is how I'm envisioning talking, I guess, looking at it. And we're going to break that down here in just a little bit, but more on that here in just a few. Before we get started, I know you want to say thank you to a number of great people here.
Yeah, special thank you to our now part of the tribe members over on Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon if you're interested. After this show, we will be doing a breakdown of some of the Andor footage that we saw, or the sizzle reel, I guess is the technical term for it, and some of the comments that came out and all the good stuff there. So, but a special thanks now part of the tribe, Alex, Raphael, Danny, Mike, Morta, Lauren, Dante, Riz, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. I gotta get my feet under me again. I'm out of practice now. And they're Delusions Grandeur members now. This is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Daz. Thank you all so much. cantinacast.com/Patreon. If you are curious about what we are up to, again, we're going to do Andor tonight right after this show. And then I believe we're going to come back and do, is Mandalorian a Patreon only later this week? Or is that going to be
no,
public?
that'll be public. So Mandalorian Grogu will be public on Thursday night. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we'll come up with some other great content for y'all in the meantime, of course, as well. So again, thank you. And thanks to the folks out in the live stream already, One versus CPU, Sky, and Steph, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you'd like to come out and join the chat with us live, I guess we'll continue doing live on Sundays. Now that Acolyte is over, we moved during the week to Wednesdays. Usually it was Thursdays. So we'll see what the normal cadence is, but I think Sundays are usually our go-to here, usually at 9 p.m. So a special, not night, but a special time tonight. So 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Wow. Out of practice. Let's do this.
Yeah, I think Sundays will be, that's been our staple. At least on Sunday, you'll get some kind of a show. And then the other ones have been more or less in adjustment to when the newest content's being released, whether it's Wednesday night, Thursday night, or Tuesday night, whatever it may be. So, all right. So just quickly, why don't we just quickly talk about D23? I mean, you've kind of touched on it already. I think we were both expecting to get, we weren't expecting to get as much as we actually got. Any other high-level thoughts, comments about D23? I know you're a fan of a lot of other IPs, especially a lot of Disney stuff. What did you think of this year's show?
You know, pretty impressive. I think when it comes to releasing content that you and I grew up with, our families grew up with, and really enjoyed, like Incredibles 3 is getting more content. Of course, there's another Moana coming out, Moana 2. You know, just lots of, again, lots of sequels, a lot of franchises that we know. Mufasa is kind of an interesting one, I think, as well. It's the prequel to The Lion King, focusing on Simba's dad, of course. And his rise to being the king. So again, the previous Lion King live action made over $1 billion. So, a lot of high hopes and expectations on some of this material, but a lot of good stuff. And I was really surprised with Star Wars in general that we got as much as we did. It's, I guess, not surprising they had something. We knew they were going to have more of an experience, I think, for Star Wars, and they definitely had that with Skeleton Crew. They had a costume display. They had a number of other exhibits. They had the Disney Magic and like the ILM type of stuff was on display out there too. A few other kind of announcements in the background that didn't get a lot of notice outside of the movies and the TV series, but a lot of interesting things going on over at Disney. I think the one thing that shocked me though was that Mandalorian and Grogu was going to stick and double down and give us an actual date for May 22nd, 2026, which I got to be honest with you, sounds like probably the exact same date or within a week or so of what Avengers Doomsday is going to be. So
yeah,
are we really going to do this?
Yeah,
I guess so.
I think we are. And I want to bring that up on Thursday's show. I want to talk about the pros and cons of that and why this one may feel a little bit different. I think we've already touched on it, but it's worth probably revisiting again now that we're talking about that more. I think overall,
what were some standouts for you though?
Well, I liked all the Marvel stuff. It was kind of interesting. I love the fact that they're bringing the Daredevil series back.
Oh yeah, Born Again's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that looks great.
It seemed like they really captured the vibe of the Netflix series, which was so good.
Yeah. So excited about that one. I think for me, I was disappointed we didn't have any X-Men stuff, but again, I'm all in on the Fantastic Four, even if all we got was that tiny little clip of them saying hello. I get it. They just started filming, so that totally makes sense. But overall, I mean, I was pretty happy. I mean, we've already gotten the big reveals, right, with Marvel, and so I wasn't expecting anything huge. But I was happy with all that. The Incredibles 3 thing was another one that was one that stood out for me, I think. I liked the Manny Jacinto Q&A thing they did with Kristen Beaver, who was kind of she was emceeing, hosting that yesterday, or was that today? Now I forget which day that was, but that was really great to see his reception and just how well welcomed he was into the Star Wars community by what looked to be 1 million women. Honestly, let's just be honest. But
didn't even have to take a shirt off.
I mean, there were guys out there too, but when you looked at it, it was predominantly women in the audience. But I mean, he's such a great actor and such a great person, and really enjoyed that whole interview that they did. But I mean, overall, D23 is something I've never been to, and it's the more I watch these things and follow them, the more I kind of want to go at some point. Like I think I want to add this to my bucket list, and I don't know when that will be, but at some point, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to get around to. So
it's kind of cool seeing when they go to Anaheim. It's like, hey, I actually recognize this little street avenue walking up to the convention center or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, we've been there. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. But all right, well, cool. Let's get into the breakdown of the trailer.
Real quick, just double down. So after the show, if you're a Patreon member, now part of the tribe and above, we're going to do the Andor footage, which I got to tell you, I am beyond excited. If there's one thing in Star Wars you ask me, like, what am I most excited about? It's going to be Andor Season 2. And a lot of great stuff. We've got great visuals. So cantinacast.com/Patreon. Make sure you go and check that out. We've already got a link over there for you, hoping to start around 9:30.
Yeah. No, a good point. All right. Let's see. Let's bring up. I'll pull up the trailer that they released. This is the official one, so we're not doing anything sketchy here. And I want to talk at some point. We need to weave in some of the discussion around the pictures that were released on what was that now? People Magazine.
Right.
Yeah, I think we had scheduled a show to talk about and do a breakdown of those, but figured as soon as we found out this was coming out, we're like, well, it's probably going to be irrelevant at this point. So at some point we can try to work that in here. But I want to start with the opening shots here and talk about some of the more I think real criticism. And I don't have this personal criticism myself, but there's been a lot of discussion around these first couple of shots and the suburbia of Star Wars that we're seeing, the American suburbia of Star Wars that we're seeing, because it is a little skew. It's not skew, but it's a little, I don't know. It's very different compared to what we've ever seen in Star Wars. And I don't mind it. I actually like it. But even in this opening shot here, where we got Wim, right? And he's sitting here, he's lying in bed. He's got a twin size bed. He's got printed sheets, a pillowcase. He's got jammies on, when we get to this next shot here with the little models hanging from the ceiling. I mean, this all just screams, again, circa 70s, circa 80s suburbia America, but it also screams Amblin Entertainment, right? And I think that's what they were going for. They were going for that kind of feel and the mood, the aesthetic of what we were seeing in film around the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s. And I think they capture that honestly brilliantly, which I actually do enjoy. But what are your thoughts, I guess, just in general around that? Do you have a problem with this? Does it make sense that at some point, somewhere in the big galaxy, there is this in Star Wars? Is that a thing?
You know, it's a weird feeling. You recognize these things exist, right? They have to exist in some way. They make sense that they would exist. They are highly Americanized, but then so was the whole George Lucas idea of the race cars and things like that. There were Americanized elements in a lot of the stuff because that's where the stories were originating, more or less. But again, if you like E.T. and if you like the Goonies, this is like your hook, line, and sinker probably already just from the imagery. It does feel weird for Star Wars. I think anybody that's a Star Wars fan will probably admit that to you, even if they're really in love with this and like this. It probably feels very strange and very odd. And I'm right there with them. I think this is a little bit to get used to. I don't think we're going to linger on this planet for very long. Maybe the first episode, maybe we do some flashbacks. Because we know from the celebration footage that we got, it was actually more focused on the adults and the family aspect of this a little bit more than the coming of age friendship type of angle that they went through for this one.
Yeah.
So I think we'll bounce back and forth a little bit, but I think what we'll see here, but we kind of felt like this though with Andor too. We had more of the corporate life, right? Mandalorian went this way too, a little bit too. The corporate aspect of the New Republic, of working a day job and having an accountant type of job and, a bank lobby kind of feel, right? These things do exist because that's just kind of how we're structured. There are other places in the world besides the US that have similar feels to this in some way. Not everyone, of course, but we all have our flair and flavor of it. So that it makes sense that we have everyday people, middle-class people in this kind of environment where they take the bus to school and they have cars on their streets. It shouldn't be that surprising, but definitely agree with them. It does feel weird and it feels out of place, I think, with Star Wars. So does it feel Star Wars-y in this moment, like in these early parts of the trailer? Not really, but that's okay. The rest of it feels very Star Wars-y.
Yeah. And I think honestly, and this probably goes without saying, it's probably obvious. I don't see a lot of people talking about it though, but when you set this as the starting point, right? The stage, the world, the environment, the life that these kids live, and you juxtapose that to what they're going to be seeing, what we see later on in the trailer, right? It's such a stark, drastic difference in their realities and their worlds. And I think they needed to do this because, one, like you said, it does tap into us, especially as Americans or anybody that's in love with American cinema and is familiar with this era. It pulls at your heartstrings, right? You have a yearning for that nostalgia of the Goonies, of all the E.T. I mean, you could even throw Stranger Things to some extent in there. They did a good job of kind of recapturing a lot of that as well. But it really puts you in that mindset. And then you take that, you remove them from that. It's such a drastic change that it has, I think it's going to have a more emotional impact, maybe more on the kids, but that should transfer over to us as the audience members. I think One Up versus CPU or someone that said, he says, when we see people living in Star Wars, it's either Coruscant or some farm in a village in Ryloth or something. And I would agree. Like if Coruscant was a starting point, I don't think it would have the same effect because we're so used to Coruscant. It's unrelatable to us because we have nothing like it, right? Unless you live in a really big city. And even then, it's really not the same thing when you start digging down and breaking it down. And I think with the farm village, I don't know. I guess that's a little cliche. And a lot of people, honestly, not everybody lives in a farm village, but a lot of people can relate to suburbia, not necessarily America, but just suburbs in general. And so I think it does a good job of kind of setting, here's where they're coming from, here's where they're going. And it gives the actors a lot to work with when they're starting to really like eyes open, wander and explore this new world that they're in. It's just, it has a more profound impact than we're thinking, I think.
Yeah, when you think about the perspectives that Star Wars often gives you, it's the rich, the poor, and then the bureaucratic political side of things. So there's never really been a place for those in the middle. I think where it's interesting about where this goes is that often we equate middle class kids, maybe kids today in particular, is unable to fend for themselves, unable to care for themselves. Are they any good in a fight or in a pinch out and if they get lost, right? What happens? And I think this is what this show is going to show us. It's going to show the resourcefulness and having to come together in order to be a stronger unit in order to not only survive, but find a way home and maybe even thrive and learn things along the way. So it's going to be interesting to watch like how this develops and how they shape these kids and as we get through the trailer here, we're going to see that some kind of desire adventure and things like that, while others might be a little more reserved for it.
I like the mix of the aliens. We'll see a better picture here when we get to the school settings, but they do seem to have a number of aliens. But yeah, even like the asphalt, the roads. You've got these cars. They seem to be on tracks of sorts. Did you notice that? They've got like they're not hover cars.
Yeah, we don't have any accidents this way. Everything's on a
everything's on rails.
A track. Yeah, these are like those tracks as kids, like the race cars, the RC. Where you pulled the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of remember that.
And that's an old one. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. Let's see. And then right around this time, and these are the kids. This is Wim and Neil heading off on the bus, heading to school. And it looks like they ride the bus, and I'm assuming KP and Fern ride a motorcycle, which is totally rad that they do that. And these guys are stuck on the bus. But we get the voiceover here. Tomorrow's test will set the course of your entire future. When she said that, and you know, given what's happening the rest of this trailer, I thought they probably won't even take the test. I bet they skip out on the test or something, and that's how they end up going to uncover the Onyx Cinder ship.
And that's what they'll come back at the very end of it and be like, "You missed your test. You got to do it." And they recap it. It's like sitcom ending.
Bum, 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 bum. Yeah. We go to the first shot of the school, and this looks like a testing center of sorts because it's not a classroom. They're all in here. I imagine this is the day of the test. I noticed there's one seat missing or empty here as well. Everybody else is sitting down except this one person. I don't know whose seat that is down here below, but we've got droids that are kind of like the administrators, I guess, of the test, making sure nobody's cheating. Right. Quick shot here of Fern kind of gazing off into, I don't know what she's doing, daydreaming, thinking of adventure. I do want to talk about Fern at some point. Maybe now is the time to do it. There was one photo of interest, particular interest to me, and I posted this on social media. There was a picture of Fern, and she's wearing like a bomber jacket. Right. Did you see this in the patch that she had on there? And the three initials were DAK, and I thought, oh, what if it's Dak from Empire Strikes Back? Like, what if this is her kid? And I started doing the math, and it's feasible. I mean, he could have had a kid. He could have been off fighting the Empire. He had a wife and kid at home, and now she's left to live well, I don't know. I guess he technically did die, but yeah, I just wondered if do you buy any stock in that? And honestly, I wasn't able to translate anything else on that jacket. We'll talk about the patch here in a little bit, which is completely different. But what do you think? Do you think that's too deep? Do you like it if they did something like that as a tie-in Easter egg kind of thing?
No, I don't mind the Easter egg at all. I think it'd be interesting and neat I'd like it if they don't explore it too much though, and just kind of leave it out there for the hardcore fans, because that's kind of a deep cut for Empire Strikes Back fans. I mean, most people know who Dak is if you're really into Star Wars, but a kind of a throwaway character in a more casual sense. I think that's actually a pretty fun Easter egg to throw in there, and it'd be weird to have a patch with your dad's name on it. That's a little strange, but if it was just an Easter egg too, it stood for something. It was just the initials. I still think that's pretty fun as well. And again, what Star Wars without a little reckless speculation on what something might mean, and we never actually talk about it ever again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it'll never come up in the show. Now we've said that. I'll come back to some of the Suburban comments here in just a second because we have some more shots of that. We go over to what looks to be the classroom. I think that's Wim right there that we see in the back. This apparently is like his teacher. Again, and then the droid assistant here looks like a smaller class. And then we see Wim here. He looks a little bit nervous, maybe uneasy about the test, or he didn't do his homework. He seems to be the kid that is like just not really feeling school. I mean, like what kid is really? But he seems to be the one that's head in the clouds, especially with what we're hearing him talking about. Don't you ever want to do anything exciting, right? He's thinking bigger plans. He wants to get out there and do something high in adventure. Everything that Yoda says a Jedi shouldn't be when he's talking to Luke. But what do you think's going on in this game?
Well, yeah, we see a little bit later on too. It does seem like he may idolize Luke Skywalker in some sense, so that he would have his head in the stars a little bit. It makes sense. But yeah, he looks uncomfortable here. Clearly, maybe underprepared or whatever it might be. But if you're going to take a test and you don't know if you actually want to be there, or maybe whatever they're actually testing for, and it isn't your path, then there's always a little bit of trepidation there, or maybe it doesn't seem like he's doing anything wrong. But
yeah,
we'll have to see.
From the creators, John Watson, Christopher Ford comes up. We get our first city scene here. In fact, I think there's one of two scenes that we get in the city, I'm assuming. And this is KP and Fern. I assume they're probably on their way to school, right? This is all part of that, intro type thing in episode 1, racing through the streets. We can see them there.
Yeah, they seem to be best friends. So we seem to have two pairings. One we have Wim and Neil, and then we have Fern and KB, and they seem to be those are the two friend pairings. It'll be interesting to see how their worlds cross over, if they just know of each other and they end up on the adventure, or if they're all friends outside of it.
Yeah. Public transit, you can see that right there. The vehicles have a very 50s,
Very 50s, yeah.
American graffiti-ish vibe to them, which is kind of cool that they've done that. Even the bike itself looks a little bit older, a little bit dated.
Well, they have like yellow stripes on the roads and stuff, like the no
Yeah.
walk, you know, the walk crosswalks and stuff. Yeah, they're leaning heavily.
Yeah, they are. And this is where we get Wim saying, "Don't you ever want to do anything exciting?" And Neil says, "Like what?" Like just very innocent and completely naive. There's the patch right there. A lot of people have been talking about this patch specifically because it has what looks to be an omega symbol, which I think that's probably going a little too deep in terms of what that possibly could be. But I know there's people talking about that. And I wrote down the translation on that is like Adelinian middle grade, and then it's like gamma was the other word afterwards. So it looks like to be, I'm assuming the school patch, gamma maybe is the quadrant or some sector of the city that they're in, that sort of thing. But that really is all that translates into.
Yeah, school uniform kind of thing is the vibe I got. And hey, we have more zippers in Star Wars.
Oh my gosh, people are going to lose their minds. Yep, zippers everywhere in Star Wars now. Let's see. That's a Tatian middle school gamma is what that says. Here's the shot that I know again. Now back to the Suburbia. Let me go to the comments.
Now
real
we
quick.
have grass in Star Wars too, like in the suburbs. With
John
trees,
Pedro says, "I like the suburban scenes. It got me thinking about a whole class of people that would obviously exist in the galaxy but have never been shown." And that's kind of where I had to. I mean, the odds are, yeah, this probably does exist. Does it need to look like this, I think, is the question. And Dante's with us. Hey, Dante, welcome to the show. Says, I don't like the suburban scene. And I totally get both sides, honestly. I don't have a problem with it, but I totally get where people are looking at this and going, wow, this shot especially that I've got pulled up here, because you can see the cookie cutter, mass production homes all the way going for, it looks like it stretches for miles in terms of the number of homes that they've built out there.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one for people to get their arms around, I think. And again, sidewalks and light posts. I mean, it's like literally the same light posts that we have here, straight pole with a little arc out into the street with the light. I mean, so it's very rooted, but I think that's the point, right? Is to make this seem a little bit smaller in scope right away. And then these kids, while they may go into the city, their life is kind of contained within these smaller communities, right? So when they go out into the big wide galaxy, it's a complete shock and complete shock to the system as well.
Yep. You got an Athorian woman here walking her dog. Looks like a terrier of sorts, some kind of a terrier. That terrier is like chasing Wim, looks like he's just run out of his house. You can't really tell because the layover, the Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni producer title here is covering it, but it looks like he's coming right out of one of the homes. So I'm assuming this is him running out to the bus, maybe early that morning. You even have a person on the right hand side of it. They're like bouncing a basketball. I don't know if you noticed that there, but they're just bouncing a ball.
But still, I'm liking the feel and the cinematography aspect of this though too, and definitely like getting a lot of ET type vibes from all this stuff.
Oh yeah, the lighting is like you mentioned,
the sun flares, yeah, the way that they're framing the shots, yeah, very, very Amblin-esque.
Yeah. Steph says, I love this trailer. It's going to be such a fun show. Dante says, I used to live in one of those houses in the 80s. Exact houses, I would imagine. And John says, it could be adventures in babysitting vibes. Oh, my God. Don't even get me started on that movie. That has one of my first crushes on it. All right. Anyways, so yeah, more definitely big vibes, 80 vibes here going on with everything, all these cookie cutter homes. And then we get Wim saying a real adventure, no more pretend. And that's very, that could be a lot of different movies. But again, I do love that sense of adventure that he really is pining and yearning to do something more than this kind of everyday, boring, go to school, come home, live in this dull kind of life. And here's a clear example of where, just where he's going. He's sitting there watching what looks to be an iPad, which, I don't think that anybody's really necessarily arguing
watching
about that.
Galaxy of Adventures on his iPad on YouTube Kids.
It's funny you say that because that was the first thing I thought is like, is that one of the Galaxy of Adventure cartoons? Because the animation style looks very similar, the way the characters are drawn. But I didn't, it didn't, turns out it's not actually that. And then I started thinking, well, is this something Luke Skywalker fought? And I could not remember him ever fighting anything like, is this Luke Skywalker? I would imagine it is with the green lightsaber.
Yeah, it was kind of maybe inspired by the Rancor, but maybe a highly stylized version of it or whatnot. And again,
Yeah.
it appears to be kind of a kids animated type of thing or something that's maybe advocating of the legend of Luke Skywalker. So maybe there's been a lot of other things that have happened since then. Because remember, this time frame is about, 8 years after Return of the Jedi? So
Yes, yeah.
whatever Luke has been doing for the many years after this, could continue to have a lot of, it could be very high profile and people stylized and kind of take that and do what they wish with it.
I do want them to name. It would be cool if they did name drop him, right? If this kid is so fascinated, you got to think he probably is keeping up on what Luke Skywalker is doing, especially when we get to The Last Jedi and he's talking about how he was this great hero and everybody knew who he was and he was, the savior of the galaxy kind of thing. I mean, that makes sense, and I think it would track. I would like them to see that. And they don't need to dwell on it, but just the fact that he's like, we could be like the next Luke Skywalker, some kind of comment like that would be nice and fun to say, hey, yeah, he's still around, of course. In this era.
What the People article did bring up quite a bit, though, is that this is going to be an Easter egg fest. And you could probably take that one in two ways. You could be really excited for that because there's a lot of things to dive into and kind of look for, or it might bog things down a little bit and be a little overkill. But I think within the context of the kids, and like you were saying, I think glorifying the Jedi Knights and Luke Skywalker in particular, and they brought the Empire down, and these were things that they were very, very small, if maybe not quite born yet, or maybe I think they were probably just 1 or 2 or 3 years old. All of these things they've grown up with, and they've not known a world without the heroism of Luke Skywalker, so that they would idolize him, and we would see Easter eggs brought into that would reference some of that thing, those types of things, or maybe items on shelves in the rooms.
Yes.
That all makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. They've got like the Luke action figures and the poster up on the wall.
Right. I mean, and like we had him staring up at the ceiling in the opening shot, right? The little ships and everything are all vaguely like other ships that we've seen throughout the original trilogy. So those are great reminders for them to be able to live in, especially for someone like Wim here.
Yeah. It seems like in Star Wars we've been making a very slow transition from holos to like tablets and video and what this looks like is an iPad for me. You have a problem with any of that stuff? Like, do you think he should have been looking at a holo? I think, and I'm not saying I haven't even checked to see if there's discourse, but there are certain things that happen, and I'm like, oh my god, people are going to throw a fit over something like that, and I can see where that is. People would be like, why are they using video or an iPad when everybody else has used holos for years and years and years in Star Wars?
Well, I mean, look at the resolution on this thing. It's so much better than a hologram.
Right.
I mean, why would they want anything else? And why is it not okay to have all of it? I think is my true response is that holograms are probably very efficient for transmitting just raw stuff. For entertainment, though, holograms probably not quite going to do it for you. If you're a kid, you want big, vibrant colors and action and good. Your refresh rate's got to be really high to capture all of the action so it doesn't blur out. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into entertainment versus communication.
Yeah, good point.
And so you can differentiate between some of these things too.
Yeah, and we saw that in what was it, Attack of the Clones, right? When they went into the bar and you could see the big screens in the background. They weren't all holos; they were televisions playing football and sports of sorts. So, all right, no, good point. Okay, this is
and that almost looks like a diorama almost. Did it actually move? Because it's very 3D looking too.
Yeah, it kind of comes into focus here like that. If you can see right there, I don't know why it kind of zaps in. It's
like he's almost like flipping through maybe static images that are more diorama type of based, and which I think would be actually really cool. Because look at the depth and the layers there, and it just gives more depth to the device too.
Yeah, I can see that. This is where they open up the Neil and Wim open the what I'm assuming is someone's garage.
It's the garage, yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's just yet.
Where every great adventure begins.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think these shots are connected either. It almost kind of leads you to think they are. They open up the garage and the girls are in there. I think these are totally different set shots. But this is where we get the next voiced over. We skipped one. It says. What if we could go anywhere we want in the whole galaxy? A real adventure, no pretend. That's the next one that we just talked about. And then he says, I found something buried in the woods. And we'll come back to that here in a second. I want to just quickly talk. We've got Fern here in the front. She's got a very stern look. Like most of her looks are like this in this trailer, unfortunately. I don't know what that translates to or what that means. And then you've got KP in the back using her visor, which I thought was kind of cool. She keeps going to that every time.
Yeah, you know, Fern kind of reminds me of like a Hermione Granger type of character, very kind of serious about her studies, serious about being grounded in the real world and, you know, and doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, right? And but maybe, I don't know if rule follower is going to be that because, I mean, clearly she's out there riding a hog everywhere, but, you know, I kind of equated to that character as the vibes I'm getting, and maybe it's because the characters have some similar looks and, you know, features to them as well. But that's kind of where I'm assuming she is. I think KB is kind of an interesting character. We weren't sure if the visor was maybe part of her being, but it does seem to be more of an accessory. Yeah, I think so. She does appear to be human, although very quiet. So you kind of see where everybody's lining up a little bit within the group here. You have Wim, who's the adventurer, always looking for something else. Fern, maybe the more grounded one, and maybe a bit of a leader in that way, but also grounded in reality. KB, quiet, but probably has. Maybe she's the exceptionally smart one, or has a particular, you know, special case. And then we have who's the other character, Neil, who's kind of the bumbling friend a little bit too, which is a bit a cliche, I think, for what we've seen, and maybe the type, the body type and things like that for him. But again, you're kind of the lighthearted friend, right? Who was Spider-Man? Who was Peter Parker's best friend in the Spider-Man movies recently?
Oh, Nev.
Yeah. He's kind of reminding me of him. Yeah.
Ned, I think is Ned.
Ned. Yep.
Yeah. If I had to put these characters into Goonies archetypes, she comes across as like the Data character. Fern is likely, oh boy, I don't know, maybe the Mouth character, because I almost feel like Wim is more of Mikey, since he is kind of the leader wanting to go on adventure, right? They kind of put him in that spot, and that would leave Neil, unfortunately, as, you know, Chunk. Right. Doing the truffle shuffle. I hope they do the truffle shuffle at some point. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you're spot on, at least with the character. She does feel like, you know, she looks like she has more money. I don't know how I'm making that conclusion. Like her parents, well, I think all their parents probably are pretty wealthy, right? Given the aesthetic and their housing, and, you know, they're in these private schools, look to be like private schools. They're very well, they've got all uniforms on. So I don't think any of these kids are really kind of struggling by any means. So, you know, it does look like she's got the latest Appleware kind of gadgets and tech all over her. And so she is probably the techie of the group, the slicer, maybe.
Yep.
That lamp is going to bother people too. Look at that lamp right there. That looks too much like our lamps now.
Yep. Straight out of Pixar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good call. They're just doing that. I like her little defiant look too when she stands up. I'm not sure. Again, I don't want anyone to try to speculate since it's like 1 second of a shot. But she does have a very defiant look or angry look on her face. Maybe they just told her about to tear their parents' home down and they're going to build condos or something.
Gosh, yeah. And then they're going to leave.
And they're going to leave on an adventure for One-Eyed Willie's treasure. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we go to now. This is one of the few shots, honestly, that was in the celebration trailer last year, where we saw the kids crossing the forest here. It looks like they're both pushing their bikes.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know if they've run out of gas, so they just don't, or gas or power. I don't know what they would use, but they're definitely pushing them instead of riding them through the forest. We see this door, vault, something open up, and this is where we get the voiceover from Wim again. I think it's a lost Jedi temple when he says he's found something in the woods. Now, my guess is it's not a Jedi temple. I think from it sounds like this is they think it's that, and then later on that the big reveal is, oh my God, it's a ship and it's been buried, and suddenly it takes off and that sort of thing. But
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
His mind's all wrapped up in Jedi and Luke and adventure, and that's the first thing he thinks of when he finds his little
right. And what else would be buried in the ground somewhere else, right? Except for a secret temple that was, you know, buried in there.
Yeah, right.
And it kind of goes back to like Rebels too. Where did they find temples? They were always in a mountain or behind a certain secret passage or some strange way of getting in. And so if any of those stories have come about over time, and again, you talk about Easter eggs and things we could fill in, the heroics of the Rebels crew, right? And some of the stories of what Ezra found. I mean, some kids' imaginations will go and find every hole in the background might lead to a Jedi temple. You never know. They're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. John Pedro says they ran out of coaxium. I hope their little kid bikes aren't running on coaxium. That seems very volatile and dangerous.
Don't worry, they have a little yellow triangle on there to satisfy the state of California.
Right, to make sure they're kept safe. Nice. I love this shot right here. Right, it's very Spielbergish. A lot of these shots feel very Spielbergish. Again, Amblin Entertainment in general, but this one was just the lighting, the shadows, and the fog. I mean, that feels like it's right out of E.T.
Yeah, and this is something that Stranger Things really did a great job of capturing too, of that mood and that lighting and expert use of shadows. Just really fantastic imagery going on.
Yeah, and this in my head, it does feel like it is the Onyx Cinder, and so
this is absolutely the ship. Yeah,
yeah. So I don't have we don't have anything official, but I think we can deduce from the trailer this is probably some kind of old spaceship a long time ago, crashed, forgotten, buried, over thousands of years, and then they built a suburb all over right on top of it, and this kid just happened to find it in his backwoods, and it's pretty clear that this has been here for a while because you can see all the weeds growing in here and the roots possibly of trees that have kind of come in and down on the ship itself. They never said the name in this, by the way. They never said the name of the ship in the trailer, and they never really mentioned it in any of the stuff they talked about at Disney at D23. But if anybody is not keeping up on current events or even events of 6 months ago, the dang Lego set was released by accident. It's already been out there. People have build videos on this Lego set already, and so we got the name of Onyx Cinder as being that black pirate ship from a long time ago.
Lego is like the best place to get content for names of ships, names of people, characters. It's reliably early too. So
yeah. So but Onyx Cinder, I love the name of it. It's very reminiscent of the Inferno, which is One-Eyed Willie's ship. So kudos to them for going just a little bit extra there. We get the flashlights are out, which all the characters on the Lego set, they all had flashlights. And I was thinking, why do they have flashlights? Maybe it's a Stranger Things thing, but no, it makes sense now. They're running around with them through what seems to be the first episode here. There's also, this is where we get the voiceover. They say hello, and we get this floor level shot, which I don't really understand why. I would assume this is going to be some kind of a booby trap of sorts, maybe, or something triggers this next scene here, which I want to definitely talk about because that is right out of the Goonies. But it does sound like maybe this thing is trapped, or they set some traps or left some little surprises for anybody that decided to pillage or raid this ship should it ever go down.
Well, it's just an interesting shot too. You have them ascending, coming into frame, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, and you have a ground level shot. So it's just a really interesting shot too for exploration and wonder. And I mean, they could CGI a rat in there or something like that too. So there's a number of things you could fit into this that might not have any correlation, and it could just be really kind of a great establishing shot as they come into frame.
Yeah. I hope we get the booby traps. No, booty traps. That's what I said, booby traps. That whole line from the Goonies as well. Right. But anyways, this is, I don't know what's going on here. Like, I don't know why there would be a slide. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like some old shaft used to move, equipment from one level of the ship to the next level or something. But there is a shot in Goonies at the very end there when they're kind of going down the water chutes before they land into the big pool of water where the Inferno is sitting there docked. And it looks like this shot, right? I mean, it's like almost there's certain shots or certain scenes from that are very reminiscent of that. But
yeah, and again, they're in a ship that's crashed, is obviously probably damaged. It might be in some weird positions. Some aspects of it might be in pretty serious states of disrepair.
Yeah.
So they could have taken a bad step or something shifted. We do have this grate kind of coming through the top. Tough to tell if that is like moonlight coming through or if that is just another part of the ship. It seems like you wouldn't have a grate being externally facing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, very Star Wars inspired with the pattern of the grate there. But yeah, I mean, it's, again, you're capturing the spirit of the Goonies like verbatim here. And I think that's going to be exciting and interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah. We get the kids start screaming here too. Can't tell if that's really coming from them sliding down the slide or if that's just another audible thing from a different scene. But this one, I don't really understand why suddenly everything's kind of exploding what looks to be off the top of the Onyx Cinder. If this is some kind of external shell or this is not related, this might be later on. This is definitely the Onyx Cinder, though, because on the left-hand side here, I just want to point this out, that is the radar. Or let me get, if I can catch it, it's like, seriously, it's like half a frame. No, I'm not going to be able to catch it. But you can see the radar dish here, and these are the engines, the back engines of it. So this is definitely the Onyx Cinder, but there are pieces. Oh, there's the engine you can see on the left-hand side there. But there are definitely pieces flying off the top. What do you make of this?
Well, we have a scene a little bit later on where the Onyx Cinder is getting, for lack of a better word, eaten by like a scrapping type of droid, which we've seen elsewhere in other Star Wars content. So it might be part of that scene where everything is just completely popping off. When I first saw the trailer, I thought, okay, maybe this is somehow it's unearthing itself a little bit and popping off all the things, but this looks like destruction. So I'm assuming this is, if it's not related to the devouring scrapyard type of scene, then clearly there's some other internal detonation going on here.
Yeah. I think the next scene is probably still part of them taking off. It looks like this is the engine or whatever getting fired up for the first time. You've got smoke and steam coming out here at the bottom.
Now we switched over to ET. Yeah, the other things.
Yeah. The lighting here, again, is just phenomenal what they've done with some of these shots.
Right.
And then there's our one-eyed Willie shot. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell whether or not this is an actual, what I'm going to call a pirate ship. I would like it to be, simply given everything else that we've already talked about and know about this show. I think Dante had said it'll be an old automated ship made to drop hyperspace beacons. Could be. There could be a lot of different uses, but the idea of having pirates in there would be really cool. I think this is probably where they get their name, the Skeleton Crew, because the crew of this ship are all dead and they're all skeletons. So I think that's now been officially revealed. But it is interesting, this one skeleton here, and you can see on the left-hand side, it does look to have some kind of a scimitar or a saber, put through its chest, and it looks like that's where this poor guy died.
Yeah, I like the Pirates of the Caribbean type of feel here, because I love the Pirates franchise, or at least the first several, and I like working this in the Star Wars, and we've started to not quite double down on pirates, but they are such a huge part of Star Wars in general. Everything from Maz Kanata and Han Solo to an extent, to Hondo, and to now Vane, who's going to appear in this series, who wasn't in the trailer, surprisingly enough. Yeah, as well as all of the other ones that we saw in The Mandalorian too. So I like bringing that into it, and I like the idea of it, and pulling from kind of other Disney franchises a little bit and paying a little bit of homage to some of these other ones that have been huge billion-dollar type of franchises too, and just incorporating them in very subtle. I mean, we could argue this is not very subtle, but this is very effective, right? Not only does it help you still capture the vibe of what they like, the stuff in Goonies, but I think also with, what do you do when you find an old wrecked pirate ship, right? You expect to find loot, and your imagination starts to go wild, and what adventure might it have contained historically, and where might it take you now? And I think those would capture the vibe of what this series seems to be going for pretty perfectly.
Oh yeah, they've nailed that for sure. And quick shot here, the kids are startled. I imagine this is SM-33 coming to life, because we kind of get that from a shot later on.
Freak me out too, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
and then
zombie
in the
K2SO, yeah, no thanks.
And then in the People magazine, there was a shot of them all huddled around this, that droid, kind of looking like it had just been turned back on. So that'd be my guess. But that's a very quick shot. We got a quick shot of Wim running. Maybe this is when the ship is firing up, and he's running to either try to get out or get to the what do you call it? I'm trying to think of the front end of the ship there, where the pilots sit.
Oh yeah, the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge. Thank you. And here's a good shot of SM-33 kind of turn its head, and then the light comes on. Maybe that's the shot. Maybe that's what they see, and suddenly they're all startled.
Would startle me. Yeah, a whole lot of nope. Yeah.
So at this point, it looks like the next shot is the Onyx Cinder taken off into hyperspace. There was one other line. It was be careful where you step. I think we talked about that one. Sorry. It looks like it is blasting off, and we see it. I don't know if this is really part of the shot or it was just made for the trailer, but if you look, there are particles of what look to be like ash and cinders, embers floating around after the ship takes off. I don't know if that's the ship. Maybe that's where it gets its name, the Onyx Cinder kind of thing, or if that was just done for, the visuals, but I do like it. It is kind of cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Was there another, I'm trying to remember, wasn't there another ship that would go into hyperspace and would leave like parts of itself behind because it was just falling apart?
Oh, that was in Mandalorian. That was the, what do you call it? The Razor Crest, when it was all trashed.
Yeah, like the bumper would fall off and stuff. Yeah. So it makes sense. Yeah. There are some like sparks and stuff, it looks like there too. So
it could be debris, right? I mean, maybe it's stuff that was just still sticking on it before it jumped into hyperspace.
It'd be fun though. I always like seeing like parts coming off. But I think overall, like this whole sequence here of what we saw, like you for as little for as not feeling like Star Wars as suburban America kind of looked like, as soon as they stepped onto this ship, it started capturing vibes from like all the movies we talked about, a little Indiana Jones in there, and started to feel more Star Warsy, maybe a little different side of Star Wars, but it really did start to feel a little more comfortable, right? And
Yeah.
now when we get to these scenes, it all feels very much in place, right? We're back in
Yes.
the galaxy far, far away, and these kids are back and they're like foreigners from our area, kind of thing. So they're strangers in a new land, which is everywhere else except their little slice of this planet.
And I assume that, and again, this is just head theory, canon type stuff, but I assume this thing already had like a predestination programmed in, and they just happened to either accidentally or intentionally fire it up. And what I assume, this looks like some kind of a pirate ship harbor of sorts, or maybe, I mean, it looks like it's a space station built in the side of an asteroid. Maybe they're in some kind of a low, not very crowded asteroid field itself, but there are other ships here, and you can see, you can't really tell from this shot, but it does look like there are other ones that are docked around here. I mean, it does look like a pirate bay of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is exactly what it's going to be, because who else would build a base into a side of a meteor or a rock or anything else? And what's interesting is the front of the ship here, the main one kind of front and center, has these stripes. That was very much like what what was the captain back in Mandalorian that they wanted to go
Gorian
away.
Shard?
Yeah, Gorian Shard. Yeah, it kind of reminds you of some of those,
I
like,
can see the coloring.
the stripes on the now this one has been, the front's been kind of torn off, but again, I think where else would pirates hang out? This seems perfect, and I like the idea, if it was a pirate ship, that it would just kind of go back to home base that's been here for generations.
Mm-hmm. How would you feel if this happened to be like Gorian Shard's actual base, and this is where they end up, and that's how they meet up with Vane, and they get kind of wrapped up in everything that's going on with those guys?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Shard's dead, right? But I mean, it all makes sense that Vane and them would be kind of going back and regrouping and divvying up the spoils and the territories and all of that. So we're still not quite sure where this fits specifically in the timeline compared to Mandalorian and Ahsoka and the other shows, but we know it's in that slot somewhere, but specifically not sure if this is going to, I'm assuming this is all going to be after what we saw in season 3
So
of The Mandalorian.
I heard from two sources, not confirmed, just again, but credible sources, that this takes place around season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, interesting.
So if that's the case, then yes, Gorian Shard will be back. Now,
Okay.
Grant, the disclaimer, the two people I heard this from are also two huge Gorian Shard fans. So they may be trying to will this into existence because they want to see that character on screen. And maybe that's why I bought into it, because I'm like, yeah, I want to see more of that character. I mean, I thought it was a great design. I mean, yeah, it looks like Pizza the Hut, sure. But I felt like it was a great design, and the voice acting that we got from was really cool. But it would be kind of neat to see a little bit of the backstory and who he was and how he ran things before he eventually bites the dust.
This is one of the things that'd be interesting to see how they frame that up or shape that, or if they even do at all. I think when you bring Vane in, depending on like what exactly his role is in the series, but trying to help people understand where that timeline is, so it doesn't feel like, wait a minute, he died like a year ago.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly. That could be confusing.
it can be, but again, they don't really always seem to care too much about that. We'll figure it out along the way, and we have as long as it doesn't get in the way of the story. Sometimes the ambiguity is okay, and we figure it out later on, because again, through the eyes of the kids, they have no idea whatever else has gone on in the galaxy. So we have to kind of walk that path with them, rather than saying that we're this body that steps back and we kind of we know everything that's going on around them, rather than kind of living it through them at the same time they are.
Yeah. This is where Neil says we're lost, and right before we get to the spaceport. And then we get to this kind of unknown planet, which looks like a scrapyard planet. You can see the Onyx Cinder is parked, or at least it's crashed or something down here on the left-hand side. They're coming up over this kind of sandy dune horizon. And then you've got this machine here that we'll see a little bit later that's just pulling in what looks to be scrap metal and stuff, and just melting it down, smelting it, recycling it of sorts.
Right.
We get the next shot of the kids kind of looking down. I think that's the same shot, although the lighting seems to change. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's the same shot, just from reverse angle here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so they seem to be looking down at whatever's going on there. Then we get a couple of shots here where Neil says really lost, saying that they're really lost because they're far from Kansas, a long way home from Kansas, or not in Kansas anymore. We get these exotic pets. We got this little pink furry thing going on here with wings.
Hold on, is this from Captain EO?
Well, I posted this too, and it's not mine. I'm not going to take credit. There is somebody, I meant to write their name down because I wanted to give them credit on Twitter, and they were all over this. Like all night they were just posting constant images and parallels between EO and this. And I thought, holy bananas, he's onto something. And even SM33, if that is SM33, one of the robots they showed in one of the pictures has the peg leg on its left-hand side. And that dang robot had a peg leg on its left-hand side as well. But yeah, I mean, there are some, if you go out there and do some research, there are some really great comparisons of those characters from that thing, whatever. I don't know what that was, honestly. But with Michael Jackson, and you compare it to some of the characters in here, and you're like, oh my gosh, is this like an origin story? Or are they just paying homage, or is it a tribute to those? I don't know, but yes, you're not wrong. There are some very stark comparisons here, similarities between the two characters.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't
four
crazy.
Characters.
Yeah, I was wanting to make sure I wasn't crazy. I was like, man, this theme seems really familiar. And then as soon as I saw it online, I was like, oh my gosh. That's a deep cut.
It's a really deep cut. Tribute to Lucasfilm there too.
Yeah. But what do you think about the vibe? This is kind of like our cantina type of atmosphere here. We have to have it in most forms of Star Wars content at some point, and this appears to be ours. Looks a bit of a marketplace, maybe a cantina of sorts or something like that. But what are you thinking about the vibe that we're getting here and some of the imagery we're getting around the room?
Yeah, I like it, and I like the fact that although for us as Star Wars fans and people that have kept up with the series, we see this and we're like, okay, it's another one of those scenes. What's interesting about this is we've never seen it through the perspective of children, much less children who, again, are being ripped out of a completely and totally different environment and then suddenly planted in here. I don't know that any of these kids have ever been around anything like that. We as viewers, again, have seen this a billion times, but it would be cool if the new take on this or the twist is through their perspective. We get to see them completely startled and amazed and really fascinated. I mean, that's clearly what I think you're seeing here with KP. She seems to be fixated on this thing, this little furry thing. And I imagine this is going to be maybe her pet that she's running around with the rest of the series, right? Because they got to get a cute character in here, throw them on a doll and other, toys and stuff to sell, right? But that'd be my guess. There are the Jawas. I think it was where was it? I think it was on Jimmy Fallon, when Jude Law came on. It was several weeks ago, maybe months ago at this point. They were trying to ask him questions, and one of the few things he did say was there were Jawas, and he was excited to finally be on screen with Jawas. It was like a big milestone for him. But there's those Jawas there. Quick shot of Fern here, again, looking very distraught, maybe disturbed by what's going on. Don't know if this is all related or not. Then you got this little like miniature Ram Man guy going on here. It's a little He-Man reference there for you, but I'm not sure what his role is, and I don't even want to try to speculate right now.
Yeah, a little more mermanish for me, but yeah.
Oh, he's got like the helmet kind of thing, so I was like, it's Ram Man, but no, facially it looks more like Merman. Man, we're bringing in all the pop culture trivia stuff.
Right.
All right.
Here's the consumer of ships, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like that is a cinder getting sucked in. It's not taking any damage.
It's like a land-based Unicron is what it looks like. Not taking any damage. That thing is like being consumed. Like half of it's inside of the mouth of this thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess you're right. And seeing the jets are firing up too, so it looks like they're trying to pull away. But then do we lose the Onyx Cinder? I mean, because we clearly see all that stuff exploding on the top.
Right.
In that earlier shot.
Yeah, and again, it's when it's digging into it, we don't have all of the explosive material going around it. So now that I'm thinking more, they don't seem like they're all that related, right? Because the other one seems like it was outside blowing up. This one is very much just grabbing it with claws and pulling it into this furnace.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it seems like someone's on the ship, probably the kids, and they're trying to get this thing to throw it in reverse and pull their way out of here. But it looks like it might rip the thing in half if they actually are successful with this. But how much of the ship is inside the maw here is what I can't really determine, and very curious about.
It's about a fourth. I mean, because here's the front engine right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the front engines are right here.
So right at where the teeth are at, I guess.
Yeah. So right at where the teeth are at, right behind the teeth are right behind the front engines. And so you got the whole cockpit I assume that cockpit's in the front. Maybe it's not, but that whole part right here at the front is completely in there. But I'm saying like it's intact, right? It doesn't look like it's doing anything other than just kind of pulling stuff in. Although I say that, but then look at this shot here that we just left, right? It actually punctures.
Yeah, and inside it's got these grinders inside.
You
of it
can see them there, right there.
Going to chew it apart, right? So it's definitely melting slag and chewing things up.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very hellacious recycling factory.
I like the color contrast too here, right? You got the blue from the engines, you got the orange.
I can't wait to hear the sound for this because you know it's just going to be super unique, and I hope it's going to be something really fun.
All right, so I'll spare you guys the dad jokes about who this is, but we've got some kind of an owl on some kind of what I assume is a telescope. You've got some star maps down here. And I was trying to think, where would this even fit in? I don't know this is the kids as much as it may be the parents. Because remember in the celebration trailer, there was the mom talking to the father of one of the other, or maybe that's the parent of the same parent. I don't know. But they were talking to another adult saying, we got to go after them, right? The parents find out the kids have left. And so you've got these parents who are now on their way to try to rescue them, do what they need, what they can. And I was thinking, well, maybe they come up to this guy here who is, is familiar with, he's got the big telescope, he knows like maps, and he's been around, it seems like forever. And so maybe he's just kind of like their guide that helps them find the kids kind of thing.
And if you look in the background, it does look like this is kind of like downtown Columbus, Ohio type of thing. So it could be back home on the planet. I'm with you. I think this is the parents working with someone trying to find something. Maybe they got a detection that there was Starship activity or something did blast off from this area in this quadrant or whatever. And they're able to track something and try to get something from it. And this is the professor of sorts that has to go and help them, kind of point them in the right direction.
Yeah. We got a quick shot here of SM-33 saying "'Tis dangerous out there in space," and then he says "Trust no one" right here in this moment. He's talking to Fern. When he says "Trust no one," I thought, I wonder if they're referring to oh God, what's his name now? Jod? Yeah, Jod. Yeah. Jude Law's character. Because Jude Law had said his character was good, but there was, there was something, I forget these exact wordings, but it made you think that, okay, he may not be, he's basically said he may not be exactly what he appears to be on the surface kind of thing. And so this might be foreshadowing or setting up this idea that they're going to trust him because he's a Jedi, as we clearly see at the very end now, confirmed. And, maybe he's got other ulterior motives. Let's see.
Yeah. I think the phrase you were probably talking about was, it's very much a piece about working together and overcoming fears and overcoming perhaps one's opinion of oneself or one's own weaknesses in order to succeed. Mm-hmm. Was that the one?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah. So Shistavadin, dual blasters, coming down there. That's cool. We saw this is one of the characters that there was a shot now that was taken right before D23 started of all the characters, and this was one of the highlights that everybody was talking about, that we finally got another one of these, and live action at that, which is really cool. He's even got blasters on his chest. He's got some old like musket kind of guns sitting there, blasters on his chest as well.
Very pirate inspired.
Yeah, very pirate inspired.
And for those who may be not familiar with the creature name, this is the wolf from A New Hope.
Yeah, you can see him there. Not sure who he's shooting, but too early.
Yeah, I don't know. When I get a really nasty, snarling wolf coming at me shooting blasters, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm going in the other direction.
Yep. It could be the kids. This is a nice little shot here of the Onyx Cinder still intact, and it looks like it's firing. I think this is probably Wim firing from it, I would imagine, because we get a shot of him heading up into the gun turret a little bit later.
Right.
But it is kind of like scorching across some planet. You can see the sun setting there in the background there. This is another quick shot of what I seem to be like an airlock of sorts. This seems to be like maybe the transfer tunnel or bubble or whatever docked somewhere.
Yeah. The ET tunnel.
Or the ET tunnel, right. Did somebody throw that in there? Oh, I thought that was. But yeah, you've got SM-33 with them, so that certainly aligns with some of the leaked footage we saw, or leaked merchandise where it shows the kids following SM-33. He seems to be in a lot of the shots, so it looks like he is going to be part of the crew in some way. This is an interesting thing. I have no idea what this is. It looks like it's got a bunch of legs, and it's got a really massive beak here in the middle. And then it has like all these, like there's an R2 unit right here strapped to the top.
It's like part of a scrapyard this is like in the ocean when crabs and lobsters and stuff, they will have what are the little things that like grow on them? I forgot what they're called. Some people actually go out there and they'll clean them off and stuff like that. There's a name for it, but it kind of reminds me of that, where this creature has been, whether it's a spider or a crab or something, has been in this junkyard for so long that things start to kind of grow and fuse and be a part of it. So
yes,
it's almost like part of its shell now. But yeah, you're right. There's droids on there and all sorts of odds and ends.
And it's hard to tell whether or not the kids are staring at it. It could be. And there's all these objects in the background. They're moving away from the kids while this is happening. So I don't know if that's the wind. You can see the wind blowing. Maybe the wind's blowing those things, or they're moving on their own. Or maybe they're just, if this is all part of the same shot, maybe they're just scared of whatever this thing is. And so they're running too.
Yeah. Thank you, One versus CPU. Barnacles. Thank you.
Barnacles. Man, we're way overhead on some of this discussion. I'm just telling you right now. Let's see.
Yeah, here's your shot of Wim going up the gun turret, it seems.
Yeah, hold that thought, Dante. I want to come back to that here in a little bit at the very end when we talk about Jod and Jude Law's character. But yeah, here he is going to the turret. Got the controls. There he is firing. I really went frame by frame trying to see if there was anything in the reflection that could give us a hint of what he's actually shooting at, and I could not find anything. But yeah, he's definitely firing. And then we get this kind of one of the final shots here where KP seems to be running. I'm not sure what planet this is. I imagine maybe this is a scrapyard planet. Maybe it is their home planet. I don't know. Maybe there's two X-Wings. They've got their searchlights on. They look to be searching for something. Maybe this is part of the rescue. Maybe this is at the very end. They're looking for the kids, and they've dispatched, two X-Wings that have come out to look for them.
Maybe it's the same two. They'll be like, not our jurisdiction. Sorry, kids. We want to help, but we don't.
What is Carson Teva? Wouldn't that be cool?
We don't have authority in these parts. Sorry, guys.
What about Wolf and Carson Teva? Do you think there's any chance it's them that have been sent out here to look for the kids?
They got
to tie it in somehow, right?
Yeah. Besides Vane, there's got to be other ways that they're going to tie those other series in, and especially if this is going to be part of the larger Mandalorian narrative, I guess. Then there's got to be something at some point that will probably interject, even if it's just a small little flavor of it. But I have a feeling the New Republic being a part of that might be a safe bet too, if they're the ones that stumble over it, but we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah. And then the final shot is this with the floating keys.
Yeah, someone with some very timid abilities with the Force here.
Yeah, it's a little shaky, a little rough. And I couldn't tell if that was like, are they going for more of a old school, it's magic, but it's really a string and that's why it's wobbling? Or is it, again, like you said, more of him and his inability to use a Force because he hasn't really used it in a while kind of thing?
Yeah, I like that idea better, that he can use the Force, but is not really well trained. He's not a Jedi, which I'm going to go on a limb and say he's probably not a Jedi, but he's someone who is Force sensitive and knows how to do it. And the stretch of his abilities is fairly limited, I would guess. Enough to get him by, especially for someone who's relying on quick wit and charm and maybe sleight of hand to get himself out of situations. And so all of those kind of feel very synonymous with how we would view you have a little something extra about you that helps you in those situations, but it doesn't necessarily tip the balance of the battle in your favor. It's just enough to help you survive of sorts and maybe scratch out a living at times.
Yeah. Nonetheless, it looks like they're in behind bars. I imagine this is maybe the pirates have captured them. I've got a lot of questions as to why Jod is behind bars. What did he do to get there? But he's using the Force, pulls the key through the prison bars. This is where Wim says, "You're a Jedi?" And then he pulls his hat back or his hood back. Again,
very dramatically too, by the way.
Yes. Well, and then he's kind of like, he's almost got a little smirk here at the very end. So
yes, I am a Jedi.
Well, and yeah. So if it's in response to that, that's a very interesting take, or why he would play it that way, as like very proud, kind of thing. Or maybe if Wim looks up to Jedi, then maybe he's playing into that. And you're right. He may not be one. He could just be somebody who's Force sensitive. He's like, oh, this kid's fascinated by Jedi. I'm going to take advantage of this for whatever reason. I don't know what that would be at this point. But Dante had an interesting comment. He says, what if he was a Jedi but turned Inquisitor? What if he was a Jedi, turned Inquisitor, and left the Inquisition? and suddenly, he's rogue now or something, and this is how he's been living this life of crime kind of thing. And so maybe he's getting more in contact with his or in touch with his light side again.
I think y'all are going down a path I'm not going to follow.
It gets complicated and messy, right? But he is Force sensitive, and I don't know that he's a Jedi though, because when he was asked this question so many times in the last probably 4 or 5 months now, and I mean a lot, everybody brought it up. He was very tight-lipped about who the character of Jod was, which makes sense. They can't really talk about that kind of thing, but it sounds like that particular or his background may actually be pivotal to what's going to happen in that. Usually, when they show us something like this in a trailer this early on, it's not going to turn out that way. Right. It's misdirection of sorts.
Well, look behind him too. It looks like there's a skylight type of thing coming through with a rock setting behind him. So is this the same cell?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult to really say. They stitched together really well. So it might very well might be. And again, I like the idea that he's kind of using whim's enthusiasm. And again, he's someone who's maybe trying to survive. And again, his morals are not always, they're loose at times. Potentially, it seems like that's some of the things that Jude Law's been saying in a roundabout way. Again, he hasn't really had to answer for anybody but himself, so that he might maybe not put the kids in danger intentionally, but use them to an advantage in some way, which we see in content all over the place, right? Of, I've got a kid, they're cute, they can go do things for you because they're small and they're crafty and they're sneaky and they can get away with things that I can't as an adult. So
yeah,
I could definitely see some angles where he would use them to an advantageous position temporarily and then intend to get rid of them. And when he finds out they have a ship, that's a way off this planet, and he can kind of align with that because they're just kids. Like, what, how difficult could this really be? But I like that he might use whim's enthusiasm for him a little bit and take advantage of that to an extent and see where that goes. And I think playing it up and being a little dramatic, I kind of like the idea of that in some odd way, of that he would actually be very chest out and say, yes, I am a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm on a very secret mission type of thing, right? And and they don't know the difference. And really, he's just someone who was, forgotten. You're really young during the Clone Wars, didn't really get found, and has just been scraping away out and doesn't have any true love for the New Republic, and is just kind of living in this pirates, this just constantly maneuvering throughout these pirates throughout the galaxy, just trying to scratch it out.
One Up says, hey, kid, maybe he's like, hey, kids, I know Luke Skywalker.
Oh, yes, old mates. Yeah, we started the first temple on Iriadu together one time.
Yeah. Jorge says maybe he just knows the Force like Maz. Yeah, Force sensitive. Like, really? Right, Maz, of all the characters you need to bring up that are Force sensitive. December 3rd is when this series is scheduled to launch. I think we've already found that out. But
do we have confirmation of how many episodes there are?
No, not yet. I think I've seen anywhere from 6 to 8 is where I think I saw, but
that's
nothing official yet.
Yeah,
and I don't even think on even like on leaks and stuff. I don't know that they've really anybody's had a leak on how many episodes just yet, or the length or any of that stuff. That'll probably come out here in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was really strange to think that the last time we saw content for this was back in April of 2023 at Celebration last year. Of course, the strikes and everything really impacted the show quite a bit with reshoots, and we knew that was probably going to have an effect on it. We didn't know it would delay it a whole year. We thought maybe this would be more in the spring, early summer, things like that. But then we got Acolyte instead, and here we are with the December release. It actually kind of makes sense, right? So it's a bit more of a kind of bringing the family back in Star Wars. Is a bit of a kid adventure focusing on the youth rather than, like, even Grogu feels like a very different exception, within the package of the Mandalorian cult and the all of that type of stuff. So, for this to happen during the holidays might have more of a family holiday type of vibe, which I think for Star Wars is something we haven't had in a long time. Very much a general vibe I'm getting in the show is somewhat like Caravan of Courage, like the old Ewoks movies, right? Yeah. And I don't mean this in a negative way because those movies are kind of crap, but the overall vibe and the intent of them, right, were very much to be family oriented, focused around the kids, and adventure. They get lost and have to go find things. I mean, it's very much the Ewok adventure, right?
Yeah.
At least in concept. And conceptually, they were, really I mean, that's what they were intended for. And this could do something like that, but bring it to more of a kind of a modern feel, but really leaning in on all of that 80s content that we produced in mass quantities that was very similar to this.
The last thing I just want to quickly in the last few minutes here, we have the official key art that was announced and shown. I love this picture, and I'm glad you used it for the title card. But there was a quote from going back to the People magazine when they had asked Jude Law about what this series kind of meant to him, or how would you kind of explain it. And he said the first word that comes to mind in describing the series is joyful. I mentioned that this is the first word that I thought. I mean, there's something bright, hopeful, joyful about this. I love the lighting again, even in this poster itself, but really great key art here. And to kind of go back to what you were just talking about and put a cap on it, there's something special now, and it's been for years, about having Star Wars at Christmas time. Yeah. And had they not launched this in December 3rd, I mean, we wouldn't have any Star Wars for the first time in a while here around that Christmas time period. So I'm grateful for that. There's just something special about it now. So I'm excited there too. But what do you think about the key art? And then is there anything else in the People magazine that you want that stood out to you that you'd want to touch on here?
For the People article, not a whole lot. It was really surface level. I think for most of it, there were a lot of comments about Easter eggs and things like that. I think with the poster and key art, I like this. It's very simple. It's very basic, but I think it captures kind of captures that spirit of adventure, I think, right? The kids on bikes, finding a ship, racing towards it, not sure what they're going to find. And again, very much a throwback to that just idea of wonder and mystery and not sure what you've gotten into. Is it everything you really hoped it would be? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I think for a lot of people, it's captured a part of their youth, or a part of like feeling youthful, not nostalgia necessarily, but kind of that youthfulness of uncertainty around what do I want in life. And then whenever I start to get it, and am I equipped to be able to handle it? And it pushes your limits in a lot of different ways. And you're just out there on your own and figuring it out and finding a way to do this. And I'm really, it's going to be very much a coming of age type of thing too, for the kids, of seeing them grow and expand. I think that's where Jude Law has captured some of that too, is that he gets a lot of joy by seeing what the kids have done and making comments that, the one criticism that the kids get is that they need to stop smiling because they're having too much fun doing what they're doing. And it's intoxicating, right? It's a connection that he would make, because I'm sure it probably takes him out of those moments too, of like, hey, we're trying to do a really serious scene here and we're having fun, but it's really difficult to get back into this at our age and be more serious than it is at theirs, who maybe, can, I don't know, go in and out of these phases a lot easier maybe. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I like the idea that it's capturing some people's, just, I don't know, imagination, I guess, again, and something a little bit different than what we have. And again, palate cleansers and things like that are really good. And we'll have to see how this fits within the overall narrative where we're at in the timeline here after Return of the Jedi. But, I'm a little cautious on this show. It's not really a show that speaks to me directly, I think, because I watched E.T. as a kid. I've seen parts of Goonies. I've actually never seen Goonies all the way through. That shocks a lot of people. And like, I love Steven Spielberg type of movies, of course, but some of these just never really spoke to me in that way. So I'm a little lukewarm on this one, but with what they did and kind of how they started tying it a bit to Star Wars, I'm interested to see where it goes. So I'm going into it with eyes wide open, though.
That's cool. That's going to be interesting. I honestly did not know about you, and I'm a little alarmed, but...
Oh, no, I've already been criticized by 2 people this weekend that I did not know. Have not watched Goonies all the way through.
Oh my gosh. I'm pretty sure that's one of like 4 movies that I can like recite line for line, beginning to end, all day, every day. And that'll be fun to hear, because I'm going to be insufferable. Like, if they are like hitting all those chords, and I'm probably maybe just the opposite of what you just said. I grew up with E.T. I was fascinated by it. I was a part of that, certainly demographic, that age group that was just enthralled and raptured by E.T. when it came out. The Amblin stuff, Goonies, we talked about a number of other ones already, but that's where I feel like I'm way too biased, I think, right now. And I understand it, and I acknowledge that I am, given what they've done with this trailer and what it appears that they're doing with the series as a whole. I think a lot of those Gen Xers that were really around that time and grew up with that stuff are going to latch onto this. And even if it's bad, I don't know that I can be I think I'm going to still be biased about it, even if it's terrible. So I'm just, full disclaimer right now. Jorge says, or John says, I'm Gen Xer and never seen Goonies too. So Go watch the Goonies,
have
man.
company.
You guys
No, now I
gotta
got to
sit there and
stay.
watch it.
Now I have to stay pure.
No. You're going the wrong way. You need to watch it first.
No, I'll come back and watch it afterwards, or maybe next time I visit you, you'll make me watch it, or you'll be strapped to the couch and be forced to watch Goonies.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'll throw Gremlins in there too while we're at it.
I've seen Gremlins. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's what I would say too. The last thing, as far as the joyful part of it, I do like that. And right now, given the discourse of where we are with Star Wars and coming off the Acolyte, which is highly contested and contentious in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like this is what we need. Like this was given to us. You know, we talked about this too, right? Originally, based on the announcements and the calendars and the way things were lining up, we were projecting, as many people were, that Skeleton Crew was going to come out before the Acolyte. And they switched that on us. They put Acolyte at the beginning of the year and they moved it to, and I say they moved it, and they might have always been that way, but having coming off the Acolyte and then going into something like this, I think Star Wars kind of needs this, especially you give it around the holiday time when people are, usually nicer to each other. I think this is it's going to be a nice little elixir for the community and for Star Wars. And I've already seen a lot of the people that were very hot and fired up about the Acolyte and hated it. They seem to be pretty open to this one. Cautious, of course, because it is still Disney and they are, quote, the devil and all that. But there seems to be a better vibe going in, at least right now. Of course, we're still a ways away. Things could drastically change, especially if they need more money and revenue for clicks on YouTube or whatever. But at least right now, it does feel like more people are optimistic, that more people are hopeful about this series. More people are going into this with optimism and some of that joy maybe that Jude Law was talking about. So I think that's going to bode well for the series, at least initially, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Some of it might be also is that we don't really know a lot about this show. They've been very, very tight-lipped about it. Like you had said before, early in the show, there's not as many leaks about some of this and about details around it and around what to expect. And I think in general, that might be a good thing, right? It's we're getting this trailer almost a full 4 months in advance, like a teaser, which is actually very early even for a teaser, or it feels really early for a teaser. But again, this is important to get this show to get a little bit of momentum because there's not a lot out there about it. It is going to be very different. I don't want to call this a safe show for Lucasfilm to make in kind of response to the Acolyte or to release afterwards and try to shape opinions. But I think, again, for us to have different types of content that enable us to let go of maybe some of the more serious, really in-depth and things in Star Wars that really we have to dig into, the lore and the mythology and things like that. And we can have something that's a little lighter, a little bit more fun, a little bit more imaginative in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
I think is really great. And it not to be pure kids content either, right? So this is going to be a good kind of preteen, teen area for us to maybe explore, but with still an adult style of storytelling at times. Because I think while Goonies, you're much more qualified to talk about this than I am, but what would you equate the tone of Goonies? It's centered around kids, but it didn't always seem like it was a kids movie though, right?
No, I would say it's very much a kids movie. The jokes are kind of, time stamped as such. It's all about them growing up. There's, a little romantic relationship going on there. You have the high school aspect and the dynamic of kids, in cliques and that sort of thing. So it is very much from the perspective of kids.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly.
I always viewed like the darker scenes and all of that seemed like they were more, again, totally uneducated here. So I'm clearly not talking about something I know very well, but I like that. I like that idea though, that they're growing up within this really crazy set of circumstances that are going to shape the rest of their lives. That they ready for it or not.
And that's a good point because that's exactly that's how Goonies ends, right? They've gone through this adventure together and they come out on the other end. Literally, they come outside the other out of the cave as different people in a lot of ways, and their relationships have changed with their parents, which is really kind of foundational to that show. That movie is really about the kids and wanting to do something for their parents, and they all didn't have the best relationships with them, and they come out and of course they have better relationships, and without getting into all that. So I think your point's well taken. I think that we're going to see something similar, and that's just a formula that tends to work in general, whether it's television, movies, books, right? We want to see these characters grow, and especially when you get to see that through the eyes of children, there's something special about that, and it certainly strikes a chord with a lot of us.
Yeah, but like with every piece of content that we get, we should always all go into it at least
Nope.
Hoping for the best, right? That we'll get something that we really enjoy and being open to seeing what they give us, and then kind of judging it from there, hopefully fairly. And again, when we have kids in the mix, we have not a great history of kids in Star Wars and how we treat them. Vivian Lyra Blair was a bit of an exception as Princess Leia in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but with others, we've not always treated them very well. And so I'm hoping that this is not one of those situations where we drag the kids into our adult mess of things. If for some reason it does go that direction, I hope we can be respectful of the kids in this space.
Yep. Let's see. I'll just quickly throw up some of the last comments here. If this can be half as good as the first 2 seasons of Stranger Things, then it'll be great. Says One Up versus CPU. Music Train says watch The Goonies. Dante says, you are more optimistic than I am on the discourse. I see people criticizing the tone because it isn't like normal Star Wars. Yes, I've seen those. I've been engaged in those conversations. And again, I'm coming into this biased. They are more open because it is a white lead and white male creative team. I hate to say that. There is some truth in that. I've seen some folks out there that have felt like, oh, finally, we're getting back to, what we felt like Star Wars has always been. And unfortunately, those people are few. They're not as... Again, they're the vocal minority, and they truly mean that in a lot of ways. But there is some truth in that as well. So definitely see that, John.
Yeah, and they aren't always overtly saying those type of things. But
I know.
It's that unconscious bias that comes through of where that feels more comfortable, right? And some people really gravitate towards that, and that's unfortunate that that's the going in position that they have.
Yep. Hey, before we go, because we got to get to another show here at 9:30 for Patreon members. I know you want to say you got some shout outs for some folks.
Yeah, thanks for the folks who joined us in the live stream. Thanks for all the good comments out there. One Up versus CPU, Sky, Steph, John, Pedro, Dante, Jorge, Music Train. If I missed anyone, my sincerest apologies. It was not intentional. And again, if you are curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We would love for you to join us, talk a little Andor, a completely different shift of pace here from what we have here. The intensity of what's coming in Andor Season 2 is going to be off the charts, I think, but some concerns a little bit there too. So I hope you'll join us for that one. If you want to tune in the live stream, check those tiers out. Otherwise, it'll be released here in the next day or so via the normal feeds. But again, cantinacast.com/Patreon for that. Live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to this, thank you for the download. We'd love for you to come out and pay us a visit on the live stream sometime.
Yes. All right. We're shifting gears in every possible way because we're about to talk Andor. If you're a Patreon member, there is a link that was shared on the Patreon app or on the website. Hit that link. Join us here at 9:30. We're going to break down that sizzle reel, I think is probably a better word than trailer. But there was some interesting things that we saw, some new characters that were introduced. And it should be a fun discussion because if there's one thing that I've been looking forward to is Andor. And now we're just months away, honestly, at this point, if you think about it. So that is all pretty exciting. All right, Jonesy, any final words before we get out of here?
No, thank you, everyone.
All right, I've got updated credits. I'm going to roll those, and we'll see you Patreon members here at the bottom of the hour.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.